You may have missed the theme song because for whatever reason, it did not want to do the streaming properly. So that's okay. I'll add that in post. That's what podcasts are for.
There we go.
But hey, guess what? It's 1045 The Zone, football and other F words. We appreciate you joining in. Zach, that's me, the host at the Zach Lines. Of course, my guest today is at Stony Keeley on Twitter. Stony, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Zach. I am not in the sect of fans that are poo-pooing on this win. I'm excited to talk about a Titans win tonight.
Well, that is actually the title of the show, and I don't know if you see it on your screen, but it's okay to enjoy a Tennessee Titans victory.
Oh, I support
And
that message.
and look, here comes Mike. He didn't want to wait around for introductions or anything. So Mike at Mike Herndon NFL. I'm sure you wrote a piece saying that the Tennessee Titans shouldn't have won. They've ruined their chances at draft pick and just shit all over the Tennessee Titans. Is that how that's how your pieces usually go?
No, I wrote about quarterbacks in the Anthony Richardson discussion and why you should probably abandon hope on Will Levis becoming an elite quarterback at this point, and stuff like that. I had no interest in writing about that football game. Which
See,
I was already
close. You pretty much indirectly shit on the Tennessee Titans by refusing to talk about one of the few victories we'll ever see from this team this year.
Well, but I said last week I was going to write about the quarterback thing. So this was a preemptive. I'm not writing about Titans Patriots because I cannot write about Titans Patriots. So I knew I was
done what the Tennessee Titans do and pivoted. That's what you should have done. That's how it works in the real world. You got.
Oh, I had no interest in pivoting to write about that game.
Why do you, of all people, why do you hate the game? Because it wasn't as boring as what people want to make it out to be. Was it? Now, was it sloppy because the refs called every little thing? Sure. But I thought the game was actually kind of an old school smash mouth game between two teams desperate for a win. And I think that is the big theme for the show.
It wasn't boring. It was just depressing and bad football generally, in my opinion.
Why was it bad football?
It was a mess. That game was a mess on both sides. I mean, the penalties, which I know like the refs could have called less, but there were a lot of penalties committed both ways. You know, the final play of the game in regulation with Arden Key just running past Drake May, like I mean, just completely whiffing on him, even though he's not even looking at him. I still don't know how he didn't get a hand on him even. And letting him stand back there for like 13 seconds before throwing a touchdown pass. It was a kind of comedic game to me, to be honest.
I don't know. I mean, Stoney, I think the last plays is I like it. And here's why. Because it was exciting. I mean, that is a crazy play. And if that was a Patrick Mahomes play, we'd all be saying, man, what a crazy play. That play was so exciting. I can't believe he did it. But because it's against the Tennessee Titans, Mike hates it.
Well, I will say, critical. For me, that play was probably the first time I felt alive watching the Tennessee Titans in quite some time. So I'm not going to take it for granted. And we got some free football out of it. We got some overtime. So I'm not going to complain about that, especially once we got to overtime and we saw that drive that resulted in a field goal that we did was just, man, it was crazy stuff. It was a lot of fun to watch. Just an offensive line imposing its will.
Yeah, that last drive of the entire game by the Tennessee Titans, the overtime drive was beautiful. I mean, I don't think you can call yourself a real football fan if you didn't love that drive. Like, that was just imposing of will, like you said, over and over, and just destroying another team's reason to want to win the game. Like, they were just done. And then it followed up with an interception. Like, look, the New England Patriots are not a good team, but they have beaten like some other teams, and Carolina Panthers won a game. Like, I mean, bad teams. Look at the Ravens. I mean, first off, the Patriots beat the Bengals, And then you look at the Ravens, they've lost to some fucking weird teams this year, too. That's the nature of the NFL. Like, it's just about parity. And at this point, I think that not being able to appreciate the win it's just being contrarian for contrarian's sake. Like, maybe, Mike, you shouldn't watch the Titans anymore because obviously you shouldn't watch the NFL because that was an NFL football game that resulted in a win. I don't know how you can love it. Overtime, drama, it had it all.
Two of the worst 5 teams in the NFL. Look, I said it last week. I was like, I have no faith in them going in and taking care of business against this awful Patriots team.
They took care of business, so you were wrong there.
So they went into overtime at home against arguably the worst team in the NFL, if not the worst, certainly bottom 3. I don't know. I'm not going to get super excited about it. Look, it was a fun game. It was entertaining in that sense.
See, I already got you to
back
switch
and
it.
forth.
You've already admitted it was not a fun game and it was not entertaining, and you've already changed your mind.
It was fun in the sense that, like,
on this show.
It's fun to watch like a lobster knife fight, right? Like, I mean, that's fun because it's funny and it's not supposed to be happening, and then they're just kind of down there messing around. That's kind of what it was for me. It was entertaining, yes, but it was like freak show kind of entertaining to me. Like, oh, look at these 2 bad teams just out there trying to do stuff.
Just a reminder: the Ravens lost to the Browns and the Raiders, so. There are. I mean, that's just the nature of the NFL this year. Stoney, that last drive, the offensive line. Just what did you see from that? Entire unit.
Well, I first of all tip my cap to Bill Callahan as the team's run game coordinator because they just emptied the clip on that final drive. I mean, they had multiple formations. They were motioning dudes. They motioned John Ojukwu at one point, which was kind of awesome to see. They're throwing the tight ends at right tackle, and they're lining up another tackle next to JC Latham as the tight end. They're doing all this kind of crazy stuff. And I thought it was really a testament to this unit that even in the scenarios, there were a few plays where they couldn't quite hit that one block that would have sprung the big run. They were still getting in there fighting. They were driving the Patriots back. It felt like a shark smelling blood in the water. It's like they knew these dudes were getting tired, and they just it's almost like they fed off of it. Like it gave them a new sense of energy that made them want to just punish this unit even more. And they were picking up yards at like 4 or 5 yards a clip, just wherever the play was designed to go. Tony Pollard was getting through. There were a couple of plays that if Leroy Watson had hit a block, or if memory's escaping me right now, NWI, Nick Vanette, one of those guys that they use as blockers, if they had sustained a block, Tony Pollard would have sprung it and it would have been over with a touchdown. So it was really fun to watch. It kind of felt like one of those moments where these guys kind of rose up, they stood up and said, we're not going to allow this game to slip away from us. And they executed the offense, executed the run game specifically pretty well. So I was thoroughly impressed with the effort of those guys and their ability to kind of sense the Patriots kind of wilting a little bit and just really punishing them for it. It was putting the foot on the throat. Definitely.
I want to throw a question out there. Well, let's wait because I want to talk about the defense, and I have a question about the defense. I have a tiny bit of a concern about this defense, but this offensive line, Mike, they've obviously gotten better coming out of the bye. Every week they get better. It's this hive mind that is John Ojukwu and Leroy Watson appears to be working enough for it not to be a detriment to the passing game. Is this just the way to go? Like for the rest of the way is just to go John Ojukwu a couple series here and there, and then here's a couple of Leroy Watson, because Blaine brings up a good point. You're throwing 2 different players out there at a spot, and the defenders have to adjust to that particular player. And so, it may sound ridiculous on paper, but it seems to be working.
So watching the game, my takeaway was that Ojukwu needs to be the guy primarily at right tackle. I think he's better than Watson. And I thought he played pretty well in this game. Despite his little pencil leg. So I would like to see more Ojukwu. And I really would prefer them to just stick with somebody because I get like the idea of rotating. But at the same time, like certainly at the offensive line position, continuity and chemistry is so important. I think eventually, like what would be nice, of course, and the other element to this is Ojukwu's on a rookie contract. He would be an exclusive rights free agent next year, which means basically they can keep him for the veteran minimum for a third-year player, basically, or maybe second-year player. So the benefit for that is you have an extremely cheap potential starter at right tackle if things click over the back half of the season with Ojukwu, or if not, you get a guy with some experience who can be your swing backup next season. So I like the fact that they have some contractual control over him. And if things start to click down the stretch and you get Callahan rolling a little bit with this group, and maybe you start, maybe you bring back Dylan Radins for cheap and Ojukwu at right tackle, and you've got a young group that is kind of like has some experience together now, that maybe you can start to have some momentum on the offensive line heading into next year. I think that would be huge. But I do have to just say, while we're talking about the offensive line, J.C. Latham's a total badass. I love him to death. I think, and they released that mic'd up clip from him today from the team. Well worth the 5 minutes or whatever it was to watch that. That dude is all energy. And I love him. I love his personality. I love everything about him. So, again, we've said this like so many times now. I feel like J.C. Latham needs to be the leader of this offense sooner than later. He is the guy with the personality for it. He's got the fact that he is going to be the baddest dude on the field every single time he steps foot on the football field, going for him too. He needs to be the leader for this offense. And he's starting to become one from the looks of it. So super positive about that. I do think one word of caution on the offensive line parade is that the Lions and the Patriots, the two teams they played in back-to-back weeks, neither one of them have an edge rusher that is worth anything at the NFL level. I mean, these guys make the Titans look like the 85 Bears when it comes to a pass rush.
The Keon White slander here. My goodness.
Keon White's fine. He's fine. But, I mean, they traded away Judon. They traded away Uche, who were their two best pass rushers. So I think there's issues there. And then, of course, the Lions didn't really have anyone besides Hutch. And when Hutch went down, it's kind of over for them in that spot. So I think we got to be careful about getting over our skis too much about the offensive line improvements until we see them do it against somebody with a pulse at the edge position. So no offense to Keon White. And I do like him a little bit as a player. I think Nick Scorton is kind of the Keon White upgrade coming up in this draft that I would be super excited about being on the Titans, despite him making a poor choice in transfer schools. But there's a little draft talk for us early in the pod here.
The Detroit Lions do lead the NFL in pressures so far this season.
Yes, because you
trash the Lions and say they have no pass rush.
Overall pick pass rusher who had like 50 pressures was carrying them and having a defensive player of the year season before he got hurt.
That's a long time ago. But either way, they still are number one. Just by the way, I just want to throw that out there. Okay, this defense, and it's good. I don't think it's obviously number one or anything, and I think we've all agreed on that for a while now. I'm becoming increasingly concerned about what Denard Wilson is seeing on tape. Because he didn't look prepared for Malik Willis. He didn't look prepared. What's the other game I'm thinking of that was kind of like the Malik Willis game where it just looked like, what was the other total meltdown game by the entire team?
Lions,
Bills,
Bills, yeah, Bills.
Jets.
What was the one right after, or the Colts? It was the Colts game.
Colts,
It didn't look
yeah.
like he was very prepared for the Colts game. And then we hear from Arden Key in the locker room saying that they don't have to really worry about either of these quarterbacks, Jacoby Brissett or Drake May, which I understand his take about Jacoby Brissett because he was kind of old and he sucks anyway right now. But like, he was like, oh, we don't have to worry about QB runs or RPOs or scrambling or anything like that. And, you know, and based on what they saw or they've been practicing. And I'm like, for Drake May, I mean, Drake May is essentially younger Ryan Tannehill when it comes to scrambling and scoring rushing touchdowns. Then he goes and puts up 90-something yards on the defense, which is almost matches his season total. Season total. So I'm just a little concerned about, like, because I know there's sometimes that there are scouts that scout the opposing team to bring you film, which then causes, is it the concern, is Denard Wilson trusting the scouts too much, or the scouts really bad, or is Denard Wilson seeing this and he's not seeing it? Because he just sometimes has this weird stuff that he says and that comes out of this, because like, and I know he has to defend, you know, the players and all this stuff, but like, let's be honest. Jeffrey Simmons wasn't, you know, elite when he was going on that big rant a couple of weeks ago and all this kind of stuff. But like, I'm just a little confused and a little concerned, and I'm very optimistic that Denard Wilson's going to at least be here another year, which is a good thing. I'm not mad, but I want him to watch some film. Like, let's watch some film on these guys.
It's a little concerning, specifically because when Arden Key says something like that, players are notorious during the week for they just repeat exactly what their coaches tell them, and they hammer this stuff into their heads. And you'll hear this, they'll talk to 10 different players. They'll all say like the exact same sentence about, you know, whatever's coming up in this game. So to me, it does say that it wasn't just Arden making up stuff, that they were talking about that in the film room, in the defensive meeting rooms all week, that they just felt like there was no threat from Drake May. And I don't know what he's been watching. You know, maybe they didn't study Drake May very closely at North Carolina, but that dude is an athlete. You know, he's not a big stiff. That is not, you know, 2024 Joe Flacco back there. You know, that is a little bit concerning. And let me also say this. There's a certain clutch factor with this defense that I feel like is badly missing, because it feel to me like they could play good the entire game, but then when it comes down to the drive where the other team just has to have it, they always get it. You know, and it comes like that last drive of the game. I don't know why. Like, I think the Titans were punting from midfield, which, you know, alarm bells going off. Anyways, you know, punt team goes on the field. And I was like, they're going to come down and score a touchdown. I could feel it in my bones, because the Jets game, they gave up the big drive in the fourth quarter. You know, they did the same thing in the Colts game, obviously. And then they just completely wilted in the Bills and Lions games. But this defense has a particular knack for crumbling in big spots, which is concerning. And I don't know if that's a leadership thing. I don't know if it's a coaching thing, but it's a trend now that's very much on my radar.
I see. I would go back to, it has to be a little bit of the players, I guess, because it was the same thing. They've been atrocious in the second half for a while now. I mean, it's not just this game, not this team in 2024. It's the prior 2 years. We've talked about is how the Tennessee Titans can't score, and they can't stop from anybody scoring in the second half. And it's kind of like there's just this weird DNA thing about this team. Like, they need to hire an exorcist, someone to come in and burn sage or something to get all the demons out of this building, because there are some demons that this doesn't matter what the coach is or who they are, or what the players are, what scheme you run. There's just some bad juju inside this building. I cannot understand it. I really don't.
And maybe it comes down to the pass rush is the thing, you know, because is the time of the game where, like, fourth quarter, your pass rush should take over and close.
It does seem like they don't have that ability to pin their ears back and actually just get after the pass rush when they need it. And listen, It's JB. I love Jarvis Brownlee Jr. But he's a 5th round rookie, and it's Darrell Baker Jr. or your 2 corners.
True.
Like,
True.
I mean,
And Mike Brown.
I do think it's more play related, but I get what you're saying because it's been a couple of years of this, and like that's why I kind of go like there's just something wrong in the water. Stoney, how do you feel about this defense's clutchness? I guess you could say.
I'm glad that you mentioned the Packers game because that was something I was going to bring up as this defense didn't really feel prepared for Malik Willis, which is weird because you saw Malik Willis all summer. So that was kind of crazy. And this game did kind of feel like they weren't prepared for Drake May's legs. So that is concerning. And we had fans saying fire Brian Callahan and promote Denard Wilson to head coach. And I just don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon. As for the clutch gene, I wonder if there is part of it, like this team kind of just wants to line up and do what it's going to do. And I do wonder if by the time we get into late into the third quarter, into the fourth quarter, if offenses are kind of picking up on tells and kind of getting a feel for what Denard Wilson's defense is going to do, and they're attacking areas that they've exposed throughout the course of the game as potential weaknesses. I think there could be something to that. And then this also being a young group, and I don't mean like the age of the players, because I know they got some old dudes on this defense, but the coming together, like this defense still being in its younger stages. If guys just haven't quite figured out how to finish, how to close out and win a game. So I think there are certainly moments of encouragement for this defense. I think they play pretty damn good in the first half, and I think they have their moments in the second half, but there is something to say for the fact that when the pressure is the highest and with the game on the line, they tend to give up big plays, and that's kind of concerning. I think that's one of the areas of the defense that I would say, like, you gotta pin this down and figure out what's going on here.
I'm going to start with you, Mike. Is there a right answer to the quarterback question where is it better just to keep rolling with Mason Rudolph and let Will Levis learn off to the side under the guise of, oh, well, his injury's not ready? Or is it just play Will Levis no matter what? Because putting in Will Levis could be a momentum killer for what little momentum they have right now. And the bye week already killed 1 week's worth of momentum. And now you're going to be going over to LA where you would like to have a little bit of continuity between a pretty good offensive performance for the most part, or at least the best of the most complete of the year, build on top of that. Because I feel like Will Levis, even though, listen, it is a lost season, but like, I mean, these are guys that are trying to win games. You know, they're professionals. There's a difference between being professional and being paid. And like, I don't think there's a really like a right answer, but I do think it's an interesting philosophical discussion. Like, do you go ahead and just throw, I kind of put it like this: all 4 of your tires are working right now on your car, and you decide to take one of the tires off and put on your spare, your undersized spare that's in the back. Well, you're only gonna be able to go 50 miles an hour. So like, you know, like I feel like that's what putting Will Levis in does right now to this offense. But again, you need to see him not be that guy to make sure that he is not the guy. And it's just this weird, it's a weird nexus point.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I get it because, look, Rudolph, for as limited as he is, he's also very steady. You know, like, I mean, he's had some incredibly dumb plays. The Lions, turnover being the most glaring. And I'm not saying he's perfect, but he does generally get the ball out quickly, on time, on target, all that stuff. So, the offense does run smoother with Rudolph in the game compared to what we saw from Levis early in the season. But that being said, I think you've got to go back to Levis because the upside is unquestionably higher with Levis, even if he never is going to hit it, which, it looks like he's not at this point. But I think you've got to keep trying unless it just becomes a situation where Levis has completely lost the faith of his teammates, and the team basically comes to you and says, we don't want this guy in here anymore. I think that's the only way you go away from Levis if he's healthy at this point in the year. Because, I mean, it is a lost season. The only thing you can gain out of this season, to me, because it's not like Rudolph's going to be back next year either. So it's not like you can build on momentum headed into 2025 with Rudolph. I mean, maybe you could say, all right, well, we'll get Calvin Ridley going a little bit better, and his confidence will be better in the offseason. But I just think that doesn't outweigh getting your final answer on Levis, which, I know most people feel like it's already in, and I'm not even saying I necessarily disagree with that. But we're still talking about a guy that has 12 starts, so far.
Well, too many, some may say.
I mean, maybe so. I mean, this podcast was never Levis to start, and then we got sucked in by that rookie season. So I don't know. We'll see. I would go back to Levis though, personally.
Let me ask you this, Stoney. To build off that, the Tennessee Titans are going to be playing the Los Angeles Chargers and the Minnesota Vikings in back-to-back weeks. Two of the three best defenses in the NFL going right now. They're very physical defenses. You could always say, hey, Will Levis, we may need to keep you on the sidelines because we don't want you to get injured anymore. But, is throwing Will Levis to the Wolves against these two badass defenses the best thing for his psyche, I guess you could say?
That I don't know. For his psyche, all indications would say bad performances against those two good defenses probably going to rattle his psyche a little bit based off of what we've seen before. So I'm with Mike. I think you just ride it out with Will, but I think there's a fun question to ask here just to play devil's advocate, because you look at where they're at this season. I can't believe I'm going to entertain this. It's just for the sake of discussion here. 2-6 right now.
Mathematically not eliminated from the playoffs.
I might want to put Mason Rudolph out there and see how they do against the Chargers. And if they manage to beat them and get to 3-6 with 5 of their 6 divisional games still ahead of them, I don't know. I might be tempted to kind of ride this thing out and see if you can't catch lightning in a bottle. I think it's justifiable to say, you know what, these matchups against these physical defenses, they're not really we don't want to throw you back out there, feed you to the wolves, Will. So why don't you sit for 2 more weeks? And also we're going to kind of gauge and see maybe, you know what, we can turn the corner here and get this thing ignited. I don't know. I tend to think he would get eaten up by these two defenses the next couple of weeks, and it would be pretty damaging. But if that's what happens, that also helps your evaluation of Will Levis. So I don't know. I think they're in a position where the season is lost and nothing matters. Existence is meaningless.
Mike, I'm going to ask you the question. If, let's say, Mason Rudolph starts and he goes in and beats the Chargers, which is something that this franchise, weirdly enough, has never done in LA.
Yeah.
He goes and does it. He looks like maybe the Mason Rudolph of last week, but they still win. Stoney's right. As crazy as it sounds, the Texans are not unbeatable. They're nowhere near the team that we thought they were going to be. And they're not very good on the road, by the way. Obviously, you can probably split the Colts, maybe. And then the Jaguars are kind of trash. There is a path for this team to, weirdly enough, still make the playoffs because there's so many bad teams. There's so many 2-win teams in the AFC specifically. That's what's crazy about it. I mean, probably an 8-win, 7-win team may get that final wild card spot. If Mason Rudolph wins this game against LA, an AFC opponent, do you really? I don't see how the coach goes to his team and says, okay, now it's time for Mason Rudolph or for Will Levis. I think you have to keep riding with the wave because the proof of concept worked. You got the win, and everybody bought in. Everybody's bought in on the sidelines. They're playing for each other, and throwing a stick of dynamite in a bucket full of bunnies is not going to end up well for anybody.
I'm not going to entertain talk of playoffs for this 2-6 football team. Listen, I get it. Like statistically, there is a chance. Mathematically, this team lost by 24 points, and it could have been any number the Bills wanted 2 weeks or 3 weeks now, I guess.
But they don't have to play the Bills anymore.
Okay, but let me get to where I'm going. That's a good team. That's a playoff team. They played the Lions after that. Good team, playoff team, lost by 40.
They won't see the Lions in the playoff fever. It's over.
Okay, all right.
Throw that out.
Then they played New England at home, one of the worst 3 teams in the NFL, and won in overtime by 3 points. This team belongs, even with Mason Rudolph at quarterback and the better offense, this team belongs with the Patriots of the world. This team does not belong with the Bills and the Lions of the world. They are going to be underdogs in likely every game for the rest of the year, with the possible exception of Jacksonville at home. I don't think they're going to be favored over Cincinnati at home. I don't think they're going to be favored over Houston at home. Those are the only two.
I think it's already established they're not favored in any other game the rest of the way.
What?
I think someone already said they're not favored in any game the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, so we're
maybe the Jaguars. Then maybe that will change, but
we're talking about going to get to even what are we saying? 8 wins,
like 7, 8 wins,
7 wins. You got to go 4-5. You got to have 4 upsets over the next 9 games to even get in at 7.
The first of 4 starts this Sunday.
I'm not here to entertain that line of thinking. This is a bad football team.
But are the coaches
you know what you're doing? I'm on to you. You are using reverse psychology on this team. You want to hate this team so bad, but deep down you love them, and you are willing to put your stuff out there to give them bulletin board material to keep them motivated through the week. I see through you.
Well, Big Jeff blocked me, so I don't know if he's getting all my sweet bulletin board fodder into the locker room. But no, I think this is I just in my soul feel that this is a bad football team, and I don't expect them to rattle off
But what
500
beating
even
the Chargers? What if they beat the Chargers? Then where are you at?
We'll see. I need to see them convincingly beat a decent team, which I do think the Chargers are a decent team. At some point here, before I'm willing to give them any sort of benefit of the doubt. So far, they've beaten Tyler Huntley's Miami Dolphins and Drake May's Patriots, who already waved the white flag, before the season started. I need to see them beat a team with a pulse before I'm willing to talk about any sort of run to close out this season. I cannot get my hopes back up with this group again. It was bad enough watching Will Levis, fall off the ship in week 1 and just be drowning while Malik Willis is speeding by in a jet ski with Matt LaFleur. In week 3, that was hard enough. That ripped my heart out of my chest. I'm not going to be resuscitated in my hope for this team, barring. I mean, they need to win like the next 2, and then I'll have this conversation.
Stoney, closing remarks on the Tennessee Titans playoff chances. The road to the playoff starts this Sunday.
Starts this Sunday. That's right, Zach. I just think it's interesting to think about from the coaching perspective, because they're looking at the team differently than we are, obviously. And I could foresee a world where they're like, hey, if we get this Chargers game, we get this Chargers game, we might be on something.
That's the message.
So
we know that's the message inside the building.
Oh, yeah. It's got to be. I mean, they have nothing else. Yeah, that's got to be it.
It's just that how many people laugh once you say, well, and Will Levis is going to start.
Yeah, I mean, that's the decision, right? It's do you put Mason in and try to win the game, or do you and if they genuinely think Will Levis gives them a better chance to win, I'd go for it. I don't know, but I just think they're I don't know. I think the vibes in the building are probably a little different than us on the show here, talking about doom and gloom.
That
Well,
wax ring comment may have been my favorite comment we've ever gotten.
You can use that in your next week's article whenever you start bashing the Tennessee Titans again.
I'm going to save it. Yeah, that might be the headline.
We know that Brian Callahan's talking about, because he's already told us that he's talked about these records and chances in the playoffs with this team to keep them motivated. And listen, I know there's been a lot of talk, not just on this show, but on other shows and all this stuff about the worry of him losing the locker room and all this kind of stuff. I think that's put to bed, in my opinion. I haven't seen any signs of it. I feel like Sunday's a good example of that. We probably way overrated the mood in the locker room and what it actually was. I think we're all totally off, because I would have thought it was doom and gloom, but apparently it's not. And they're all fighting for each other and everything. And listen, we've seen games like that even under the Vrabel era. Hell, you go back to the Jeff Fisher era if you want to, where that team would have lost, and most teams would have lost that game in the Titans' history. And they actually won it with all the I think the refs were pretty bad. Listen, this is how bad the refs were. I don't know if you guys listen to Titans radio during the games or not, but Mike Keith had to stop Coach Mack from calling them assholes. like he was about to call him asshole. He says, "I'll tell you what that A on this hat stands for." And you're like, I mean, it was when Mac's getting mad, it's bad. And listen, I understand that, a hold here, a hold there, but my Lord, I mean, this was the number one team, or number one umpire team, refereeing team, what's it called? Officiating crew for both offensive and defensive holds, number one in the league. And they got their money's worth. They delivered on that promise that they will continue to be the number one team. I mean, it was bad. I mean, obviously they're two bad teams, so there's always going to be penalties and mistakes, but ticky-tacky all damn day long for the most part. I guess, I mean, there's nothing to really talk about special teams. There's nothing to really talk about the quarterback further, Calvin Ridley. I mean, all that stuff's kind of been talked about ad nauseum. But I do want to talk about the coaching job of Brian Callahan in this game from a schematic standpoint. I think we've all agreed that his scheme has been really good. His play calling sequencing, a little suspect, that kind of happens. I think it was Aaron Nagler that covers the Packers says, like, it always confounds me that there's always this, like, every week there is a good play caller that is having a great drive and lets it stall by calling some stupid play that nobody is falling for the fake and everybody sees coming. And that feels like the Tennessee. I felt that to the core. Like, that felt like the Tennessee Titans. Heck, go back to Matt LaFleur at the very least, but you go back to Ken Wisenhunt. But, like, go back to Matt LaFleur and the Luke Stalker fullback run that had the fumble on it. Like, there's just always these weird freaking plays. And, the end arounds to Malik Willis, like, all that kind of stuff just pops up into my head, gives me PTSD. But I thought this was probably it wasn't perfect, had its flaws, but this was the most complete play calling game I thought from Brian Callahan on the year. And I think it's because he was able to, his offensive line was able to provide him a lot of opportunities, a lot of ability to be able to switch things up, and his quarterback was hitting everything on time, even the drops to Calvin Ridley. So, Mike, I mean, how do you feel about his play calling / sequencing of Brian Callahan this week?
Yeah, I did think it flowed a little bit better. I do think a big part of that is probably just the protection being better, which I don't know how much credit we want to give him for blocking up, the tomato cans that the Patriots were rolling out there. But I do think it shows at least that if they can get the protection to the point where it's solid, maybe even good, dare to dream, that this can be a good offense. And I've never doubted the fact that Brian Callahan has a good feel for route spacing, scheme design, just the way he designs certain plays, I think it's smart. I can see what he's going for. I think he's really effective in a lot of that stuff. I think that my concerns with him have been, can he coach the details and get the team to follow the details and be detail oriented? Because that's a whole different part of coaching, right? Like, you can have the best scheme in the world, if you can't get your team to execute it, then it's not worth anything. But it was better in this game, yeah, certainly. And I think Rudolph having a little bit of time and a little bit of continuity in the offense. I mean, this group has mostly been kind of playing together for a little bit now, the last few weeks. So I think that helps. So yeah, I think it was a nice game for everybody, and I think Tony Pollard's a fucking stud. So it's a good. It's not a bad offense. I will say it's nice to see them roll up 400 yards of offense in 2 straight weeks. That hasn't happened in a long time.
Stoney, I know how you feel about the scheme, but I want to play off something that Mike just said about everybody kind of starting to gel and get, understand the nuances of the game or the scheme. And that's something that Brian Callahan echoed today in his press conference. He talked about how putting in Will Levis, he's walking into a better situation because everything is better around him. And he specifically talks about, players being in the right spot at the right time now. The timing is working. Everybody understands it. So obviously that 8 to 10 weeks that we kind of used to get everybody to gel is actually just real. It was the right way to look at it. And they are starting to gel. Calvin Ridley's understanding his assignments even better than what they were. So this seems to be kind of that situation where we've seen that the scheme works. We just have not seen that the execution works. And for all of us that have been pounding that table for weeks on end since the start of the season, it sure did make you feel good to see it all come together on Sunday.
Absolutely, Zach, and just in time for the playoff push, baby. This is just when they want this offense clicking. No, I went into the season kind of thinking this season would go as the development of the offense went. And the hope that I had was based off of what we saw in training camp, what we saw during the preseason, feeling like this team was a little further along than they really were. And I thought, man, if they start clicking in the first month of the season, this is going to be awesome. 2-6, almost halfway through the season. You're not there yet, but you're starting to see, like, it's like you get in an old car that you haven't started in a while, and you're turning the key, and it's the motor's sounding like the engine's about to turn over, but it's not quite there yet, and you just keep stopping and starting and so on and so forth. It's kind of where it feels like we're at with this Titans offense, but I think you can clearly see the pieces starting to fall into place here. And I think that's a hopeful thing for this Titans offense. And quite frankly, they might have been running out of time to get this thing right. I mean, we're at the point in the season where we're starting to see these 2-win teams churn some coaches, and don't know what the vibes were like for the Titans, but it was kind of getting to a bit of a nervous spot. And I think that's evidenced in moments like the relief Brian Callahan showed in the presser after the game too. So I think it's no time like the present for this thing to get going.
Mike, do you listen to the pressers?
Some of them. I haven't listened to many of them recently.
Because I can tell from your tweets you don't. So you said analytics represents far more than just fourth down decisions, but for a team that has paid so much lip service to embracing analytics this offseason, Callahan has been massively disappointing with these types of calls, because you live and die by whatever Seth Walder and ESPN tells you is a good call, even though they're not fucking watching the game. Just so you know, a little bot pops up, tells them what to do, and then it tells you what to do, and you got to go with the robot. You would be terrible in a Terminator situation. If this was iRobot and the robots were coming to kill us, you'd probably side with the robots and let them kill you. Like, you would probably just lay down, let them kill you, because that's what they told you to do. Mike, he has gone on the record so many times talking about how he has meetings, he watches the film, sees what the team does, they pull up the analytics, see if it matches the film, and then they have their green light on fourth down decisions. And that is using analytics. They use analytics. I cannot believe that you are just totally turning on them because they didn't want to use analytics the way you want them to do. And they view everything that, hey, we have a backup guard. We have a backup quarterback. Our right tackle kind of sucks. The computer's not fucking telling you that, but their computer does. Their computer also tells them what the Patriots have done in the past. You got to stop falling in line for these fucking robots. And I can't believe I'm saying that because you are turning on analytics by only, and you're proving all the football guys right when they say analytics is worthless because you guys never fucking played the game. And I don't think you have to play the game to understand how analytics is not the be all end all. But you, all the time, I see you, if you disagree with the play call, oh, man, I can't believe they fucking just shit on analytics on this team. Don't even know why they're doing analytics. You got to get a grip.
Tweet.
You get a grip.
One tweet, yes. That is me all the time. Does the analytics also tell them that the Patriots are playing Jacqueline Roy and Daniel Ekalulele, and guys like that? I mean, yes, the Titans had some backups in there. I get it. Look, I thought it was a little bit cowardly to not go for it in that specific situation. Look, it's one decision, but I think there's been a pattern, if you look back over the course of the season, of him being a little bit conservative, more conservative on fourth down than I'd expect from an analytics-driven outfit. And I think, no, there's not just one way to do analytics, and Seth Walter's model isn't right for everybody. I understand that there's other inputs that could be involved, but that
actually model disagreed with him, which I thought was surprising.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that every single decision, or that decision should be that their model's right and Walter's model's wrong or anything like that. Like, there's no saying that their analytics model is the correct one. I just think there's been some odd decisions that I think have been a little bit conservative. And it's just on my radar a little bit. To
me, this was the right decision. This was the right decision. Like, it doesn't win percentage. Dude, their team sucks. Okay, you just told me you spent the last 47 minutes, the last 7 or 8 weeks, writing about how much you hate this team. This team is not good. But the deal is, Mike, if they don't make that fourth down call, this game is over because they have had an issue with overcoming bad plays, and zapping in momentum is so much better for a team that is limping around right now with NWI, hardly any tight ends, hardly a right tackle situation, with a right guard that they didn't even deem worthy of starting, even though he started last year because he doesn't fit their scheme. Like, there is so much riding on getting the points because it's more than just the data. It's about the momentum. It's about the team. It's about all this stuff that is going on behind the scenes that analytics cannot tell you about. And I have always said the analytics cannot tell you about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry that my analytics model did not have a input for the Titans being delicate daisies and being unable to overcome.
That's what theirs does.
On a fourth down goal line.
Theirs does because they've seen it. I'm sorry that if you can't even use your fucking eyes for the last 7
but here's the thing, Zach. Listen. Third quarter, we still have a full fucking quarter to play. So you're telling me I can either get a touchdown to go ahead and get 7 points, go up 14-10, or put the Patriots on their own 2-yard line when their offense hadn't done jack shit all game. You're probably getting the ball back close to midfield, and you can get right back into field goal range with a couple first downs and be right back at the 10-10 spot that you so desperately need. I thought it was the wrong decision. I would have been more aggressive to go for it there and go for the win because, look, what the fuck does this team have to lose, right? Like, oh God, you lost to the Patriots. What are we gonna do now?
Have lost their jobs if they lost to the Patriots. I think that's a pretty good fucking reason.
Okay, but you could have lost this game because you went for the field goal and you didn't get the 7 too.
I mean, Mike, you're playing a bunch of games of what if and not living in the moment of the
Well, you're
actual
playing the
moment.
results, Zach. You're playing the results. Because they won the
I
game,
am
that means it was
playing
the right
what at
decision.
the
That is
moment
not true.
when it happened. When it happened, I was talking in the room. I said they're going to go for the field goal, and that's the right call because it's the right call. I didn't even have to use analytics to know that was the right call, and that's what they were going to do because that is what coaching is about: is having that instinct and knowing what your team needs in the moment, what your team can do to answer back. And sometimes you got to take the field goal instead of taking trying to attempt to go for the fourth down.
You know,
I mean, it
maybe
just
this
makes
team.
it made so much sense for you didn't even need
Maybe
to check in with your little
maybe this
calculator.
team wouldn't be so mentally soft if their coach didn't call plays like they were mentally soft. Maybe he needs to be the one that shows some aggression.
There he is,
Shows some
calling
faith.
for Brian Callahan to get fired and has to do personal attacks. Because I know this because I know Melo said it, but I'm sure you agreed that you hated that he cried. I'm sure.
I don't care that he cried. I really just could care less about that.
Sure. I don't believe that one bit. All right. Stoney, were you surprised by not by anything that just happened? Because I'm sure you're not. You're very used to it at this point. But the that nobody got traded at the trade deadline.
Not really, because I started to see things heated up for a little bit for Landry, Jeffrey Simmons, Quandre Diggs, I believe, was discussed by a couple of reporters, like Joseph Day. Yeah, like last week, a lot of these names got really hot for a little bit, and supposedly 4 teams had called about Landry, and supposedly another team had called about Jeffrey Simmons, and then the report came out that said they're not going to trade Jeffrey Simmons, and then when those things went quiet for a little bit, I kind of thought, feels like the moment has passed here. And then when they win that game and Brian Callahan is kind of talking about the players kind of coming together and playing for one another and the importance of chemistry and all that, it just kind of made me think, like, I don't know if they're going to get the compensation they want for these guys, and I don't know that it's worth it to them to just take any old pick that a team would offer for one of these guys. So I kind of felt early on in the day, like, it hasn't happened by now. I don't really think it's going to happen. So I wasn't too surprised.
Yeah, for me is when we were doing the show yesterday and when Baron Brown, or 2 days ago when Baron Browning got traded, and when I saw they got traded for 6, I was like, oh well, they're not trading.
Yeah.
Like that's not happening because first off, nobody's gonna pay what they want, and to be honest, they don't need any more 6 and 7s. They need 5ths and 4ths and 3rds and seconds. I mean, who gives a shit about some 6 or 7s at this point? Because they just turned it to Jalen Duncan and Jaquan Jackson, who, by the way, we all get a gold star for calling Jaquan Jackson right. I mean, this guy's got to go. And I thought it was interesting also, sidetrack, that Brian Callahan said that, normally those guys that are really small don't fumble a lot, but they take some hits. But this guy's fumbling, and guess what? He fumbled in college, and everybody wanted to overlook it. So, but like to me, it's like the 6 and the 7s for Sebastian Joseph Day and Arden Key really just don't do anything. I mean, yeah, I guess it's nice to have a what is it, be their 3rd or 4th 6th round pick in this year's draft, something like that. But I mean, like, because you have more chances to not be wrong with your 6th round pick, but at the end of the day, it's just not worth it because maybe they think they may sign Sebastian Joseph Day. I mean, from what I've heard, he's a good locker room leader. We know they kind of like Arden Keys and all that kind of stuff. And, why get rid of Arden Key for nothing, like a 6 or 7, like a 5th? Yeah, obviously run to the podium for either of those guys. I'd take a 5th. I think maybe they would want a 4th. I don't know. But like for me, I just don't think a 6 or 7's worth it for any of them. I was kind of surprised no Nick Folk, Tyler Boyd rumors, because I thought that those were 2 guys that could possibly find a home elsewhere. But I thought that was interesting. And Mike, do you have any revisionist history now that you saw Mike Williams go for a 5th and Jonathan Mingo go for a 4th, that they traded DeAndre Hopkins too early? Because in my mind, it's like, what if DeAndre Hopkins gets injured? What if the Chiefs fill that position beforehand? I mean, and I think we could just kind of toss out any trade that Jerry Jones does because that's the extreme outlier at this point. But I mean, do you find yourself a little annoyed, I guess, by it?
A little bit, yeah, because I will say, and I was fine with the compensation at the time. These other deals have, like, unquestionably, DeAndre Hopkins is worth more than Mike Williams. Is worth more than Jonathan Mingo. Like that's unquestionable. And Hopkins proved it with that game for the Chiefs the other night. So I think, yes, it's fair to say they probably should have gotten a straight up fourth for him. But we'll see what that turns into, of course. Look, they're looking pretty good to meet those conditions at the moment. So I don't know. I would say they did not get great value for Hopkins, given the context of the other deals that have happened at that position. But look, fourth, fifth, not his best deal. I thought the Ernest Jones thing kind of made up for it. If you pretended they traded Hopkins for the fourth and Ernest Jones for the fifth, I don't think anyone's complaining, right? So,
do you feel like the Steelers though just kind of did a panic trade? Like this kind of feels like a panic trade because Mike Williams is just George Pickens with an injury history. Like, I mean, and I know that Russell Wilson looked good in one game throwing the deep ball, but like that's not his bag anymore. So I don't know why they're going that route with him. But like I feel like those are both obviously Mingo's an overpay, but I also feel like contract comes into play, age comes into play. But for Mike Williams, you'd have to factor in injury. I just feel like, to me, I'm kind of annoyed, but I'm understanding of that. I think just Steelers. I ultimately land the Steelers and the Cowboys just overpaid.
Well,
for
hold on now. Future wide receiver one, Jonathan Mingo in Dallas. If anybody can fix Jonathan Mingo, it is Mike McCarthy, boys.
And Cooper Rush.
And Cooper Rush.
And also, that's the other part of it is like they were trying to trade DeAndre Hopkins to a contending team. If the Steelers are going for Mike Williams, obviously they probably wouldn't have gone for DeAndre Hopkins. That's kind of what it feels like to me because those are two drastically different wide receivers in style. And then I also think like you wouldn't trade him to the Cowboys and knowing that Dak Prescott's on IR if you're trying to do him a favor, and maybe at that point you're not if you're getting a straight up fourth. But if those guys were even interested a couple weeks ago when they were actually, I mean, still looking for wide receivers, you think they would have called on DeAndre Hopkins. So you just kind of have to assume that they either called on DeAndre Hopkins or didn't call on DeAndre Hopkins. If they did, they didn't provide a good enough offer for DeAndre Hopkins at the time. And maybe waiting, you get a little bit more panic. But at that point, you risk an injury for a couple of weeks, and that's not good for a 32-year-old wide receiver and for him to look worse because, I mean, he didn't look really good when he played here, unfortunately. So putting more bad stuff on tape may not have been – that's no diss to DeAndre Hopkins. That's just, I think, a fit of the system and the quarterback situation. But, like, I don't know if it really works out. And in the NFL, you kind of have to bite while the getting's good, you know? You just kind of have to do that sometimes, and I feel like this is that kind of instance. Chargers game – I don't really want to talk about it because they are just so damn good and it's so annoying because they're doing it with a bunch of cast-offs. Like, not just Titans cast-offs, but cast-offs like Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, wide receivers everybody gave up on, and Quentin Johnston. I mean, they're just getting it done, and that's a Jim Harbaugh team, and there's just something magical about it. But I do think this is going to be not as bad as the Detroit and Bills game, but I feel like they're going to be thoroughly outclassed. Mike, thoroughly outclassed, or thoroughly outclassed or playoff bound?
I honestly think they have a chance to compete in this game because I don't think the Chargers are overwhelmingly talented. I would say, and look,
you think they've been the benefit of an easy schedule?
I don't know about easy schedule. I mean, yes, I guess they're 5 wins. None of them are really against good teams. The Broncos is probably their best win. So yeah, they've had an easy schedule for sure, but they did hang with the Chiefs. Not that you get a whole lot of points for hanging with a team and ultimately losing to them, but um, they're a good team. I think the defense is legitimately good, and I think that is a Jesse Minter effect more so than they do have some talented pieces that have never really come together, but I think the Chargers are kind of a testament to what coaching can do for a team. And look, this isn't a shot at Brian Callahan. He's a first-year coach. Jim Harbaugh has won at every level that he's coached at and has been doing it for a long time. But Jim Harbaugh has got that team rolling in the same direction immediately. And Jesse Minter is doing some really good things with that defense, schematically. So I'm impressed with how they're coached, but I'm not going to sit here and say the Titans couldn't come in and compete with them, given that the talent level. I mean, the Titans need to have a good game plan.
Let me ask you a question: who's the quarterback in this hypothetical
Either one.
company?
Either one. I think Levis. Look, I have no idea. What
You're already back. Stuff is sniffing on the Levis glue. I see. It didn't take very long.
I think Levis is a wild card. He could come out over there and he could throw 5 interceptions in the first half, or he could come out and throw for 225 yards and 3 touchdowns or something like that. And I wouldn't be that shocked.
You would not be shocked if he threw for 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 225 yards.
I didn't say 0 interceptions. That's 3 touchdowns. 0 interceptions would be shocking. But I think they could compete with either quarterback. I don't think this is going to be a like runaway freight train kind of game. At least I hope not. I mean, if it is, then I think that tells you all you need to know about where this team is. But I think the Chargers are a little overrated based on their record. Although I will say the fact that they have 5 former Titans on the 53-man roster scares the crap out of me after we've already seen a DeMarcus Walker revenge game, a Malik Willis revenge game, and a Khalif Raymond revenge game this season. Are we now going to get the Bud Dupree, Elijah Molden, Hassan Haskins, Christian Fulton, Tier Tart? Oh, and by the way,
Fulton's got a hamstring issue, so we know.
Well,
I guess
he does.
As Wes said, he saw that Tennessee Titans were coming in town. He had to go back to normal.
Yeah. He sees two-tone blue. He's like, oh, Hemi. And Des Fitzpatrick is on the practice squad. It's almost, honestly, it's like a who's who of who this fan base hates the most, which will make it particularly painful when Tier Tart has 3 sacks and Elijah Molden picks off Will Levis 6 times. In this game, it'll really be a dagger when all that happens. But the revenge game factor scares the crap out of me. Or they elevate Des Fitzpatrick and he has 160 yards and 3 touchdowns.
So let's break down a couple of the key players in this game. So you got Josh Palmer, former UT wide receiver, right? University of Tennessee. That the Tennessee Titans obviously did not. They spit in the face. Right in the face of fans for not drafting Josh Palmer. Then you have Joe Alt, who the Tennessee Titans fan base was desperately in love with and is playing really well, just like we all knew he would. And he was taken right before you. You have, let's see,
Zion Johnson is in that same boat too. There was a lot of Zionists in this fan base during that draft.
J.K. Dobbins here, and then you have Hassan Haskins behind him. Kamani Vidal, your guy, is second string currently, Stoney. But J.K. Dobbins, former Ravens player, so people do not like him. Then you have Morgan Fox, who sounds like Morgan Cox, so that's really big. And then you have Tier Tart. Then you have your guy, Poona Ford, is on this team, and I kind of wanted Poona Ford when he was available as a free agent to come over here. Dayon Henley, guy that we liked as well. Let's see, Bud Dupree,
Cam Hart,
by the way, who's having a fantastic year, and another guy that we were in on, by the way. Apparently, we work for the Chargers at this point with some of the people they drafted. Then you have Elijah Molden, Christian Fulton as well. Then you have like you said,
Eli Apple. Is Eli Apple on this roster of Titans?
He's on the practice squad.
Okay. All right.
Caleb Murphy on the practice squad.
Oh,
Your boy, Caleb Murphy, is on the practice squad. Des Fitzpatrick on the practice squad. So it is just a who's who of connections on this team. It is quite ridiculous. Junior Colson, of course, went to IR, but that was a guy today. But that was a guy that we all really wanted on this team as well. But is a who's who of all this stuff. So like, we'll have to answer Bert's question. My question is, who is getting breastfed this week? Because obviously, Jack Gibbons played really well. He drank his milk, and he played really well these last 2 weeks. Got the nutrition in him. Bones are strong. He's got Jerome Baker kept on the bench, locked away. He's not coming in because Jack Gibbons, that breast milk really got him going.
Yeah.
Do you want to do a little bit of Jack Gibbons love, Stoney? Because you are a Jack Gibbons fan.
Yeah, I felt like I was red pilled on Jack Gibbons back in the summertime by constantly hearing coaches talk about he's in the right place at the right time a million times anytime his name was brought up. So I did a film study back in July or August for Stacking the Inbox, and I watched some of his tape and was kind of like, and I kind of see it. Like, this guy's kind of rock steady. And then he goes and has 14 tackles in this game against the Patriots. And I just watch a little of his tape, and I'm like, yeah, man, this guy can go. Like, if you need him to like plant and change direction and run down the field with a guy, the speed limitations are clear. And Brian Callahan has talked about that when he was talking about Gibbons and Nick Westbrook-Akine as well. Like, sometimes you get into this thinking of like you want bigger, stronger, faster guys, but there's something to be said for just a really smart, savvy football player. And I think that's what Jack Gibbons is. I think there's a lightning quick processor in that brain of his, probably because of all the breastfeeding he's doing, where he just sees, like, he identifies the run, and all it takes is like the firing of a synapse, and he's planting his foot, playing the run, chasing the ball carrier. It's really impressive stuff. He's quietly having a pretty good season. At least the last few games have been pretty good. So I'm kind of happy to see. I'm kind of happy to see that he's not shitting the bed like so many people thought that he was.
Well, there's still time. If Will Dissly goes for 100 yards, I will never allow anybody to talk good about Jack Gibbons on this team. I just wanted to be clear. We will never talk good things about Jack Gibbons, even after a good game. We will just ignore it if Will Dissly goes off on him, because at this point, that would be insane if he did.
They're going to be this team's defensive NWI though. I mean, that is the comp. I mean, they're having the same start of their career. You just can't get rid of them. They keep crawling back into the lineup, and then they kind of produce when they're in there.
Yeah,
but they also do some stuff that pisses you off too.
Although NWI is a precious baby boy. He should have been president.
NWI.
Did y'all see that picture of him as photoshopped on Barack Obama? It was scary good. Like, it looked just. I wouldn't have known.
It was amazing.
Gibby's got a few more years to go before he gets to presidential status, but I'm okay confirming for Stokely in the chat that he is this week's cream queen.
Oh, no, I don't know if we can say that one. So we gotta be a little careful. Got to be a little careful here.
Okay, gotcha.
Can't let the chat infect the.
Yeah. Can't do it all. But either way, final thoughts on this game. Start with you, Mike. Final thoughts on the Chargers game, or if you just have final thoughts about the Titans in general.
Oh, that sounded.
Are you itching to talk about special teams? Because I am not. I just want to throw that out there.
They suck. There's nothing else to add.
They were fine this past week, so that's fine.
Yeah, they gave up another big return in a huge spot.
Did you even watch the all 22 on it? By the way,
he gave up another huge return.
So you didn't. So they answered that question. Okay.
I did not watch all 22 at all this week. I was writing about quarterbacks and staying up until 3 a.m.
That would explain your ignorant statement. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead with other thoughts.
Every time they punt the ball, the other team gets like 40 yards. So, anyways, I really don't have a ton of thoughts about this game. The Chargers are a weird team to me. The Titans are a not good team to me. It'll be an interesting kind of measuring stick in a way. You know, can you beat a decent team on the road? And kind of see if this momentum is anything or if they just played the Patriots last week. So I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Stoney, did you know that there is an unwritten rule that if if 5 of your players die in a season, it enacts an emergency draft?
I feel like I've heard that somewhere before. Yeah.
I just wondered who. No, I'm not gonna.
Man, we really are taking. We're pushing it tonight, aren't we?
Final thoughts on all alive Titans players that and this upcoming game on the Chargers.
I actually do think there's a pretty clear path to victory for the Titans in this game. I'm not going to predict it because I do think that if you make mistakes against this Chargers defense, they will make you pay for it. They will stifle you. But I don't think this team is quite what everybody. It's not what the 5-3 record would indicate, so to speak. I kind of look at this Chargers team as like the bizarro Titans. Like if the Titans had started 2-0, they might be the 5-3 team in the AFC sort of deal. They've played 4 teams with winning records. They've won one of those games. In those 4 games, they've averaged 12.75 points per game. You watch this offense, there's not a lot of downfield stuff. They want to run the ball and they want to hit Ladd McConkey on the underneath stuff. It's a boring offense that they've happened to take advantage of coverage busts like the Josh Palmer touchdown last week's game against the Browns that kind of inflate the perception of this offense. Right. And I think it's kind of, there are some parallels between these two teams where if you look at like the Chargers, they might be devoid of playmakers, but they've got the quarterback situation figured out. It's kind of vice versa. They're like the Titans Wario kind of deal. So I don't think, I think the way the defense is playing, assuming, you know, hopefully the defense is watching tape on Justin Herbert this week and they can kind of figure out how to play him. But are you going to ask something?
Hopefully they're not preparing for Easton Stick.
Yeah, exactly. But I think like the tackles are playing well for the Chargers, but the inside of the line is not as great. Twists and stunts have worked to generate interior pressure, and it kind of feels like that's what the Titans are built to do from their defensive front. I know the defense likes to play a lot of cover 3, a lot of quarters. They want to put 4 down linemen. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like what Gus Bradley does with the Colts. Similar style of defense where these defensive backs, linebackers, they're going to drop deep and there's going to be nowhere to throw down the field, which kind of makes me think that this could be an opportunity for the Titans to get the quick, short passing game going. And if they can do that and move efficiently, if they can run the ball, I think there's a pretty clear path for them to win this game. It's just a matter of whether or not you trust them to not make a catastrophic mistake in this one. And I think that's kind of the X factor in this game. If they don't make a lot of mistakes, I think they can keep this thing close and maybe even gut out a win. If there's a mistake or two, or like, you just know Hassan Haskins, special team demon, is going to like blow up punt coverage and block a punt.
Oh God, yes.
Or something. So that's
100,000% getting a Hassan Haskins block punt returned by a Des Fitzpatrick or something for a touchdown.
So if those things start happening, you close the book on this game. But I don't think it's too far-fetched to think the Titans can keep this competitive.
Well, hopefully Otis Reese will stay upright and not try to dive inexplicably at someone's legs to almost get the punt block. A bigger fake name, Stone Smart or Arlington Hambright?
Arlington Hambright.
Yeah, I'm going Arlington.
Are we sure that Arlington Hambright isn't just Quentin Bohanna coming back for another round? Because, I mean, we don't know, right? Because, I mean, Quentin Bohanna, we don't know Quentin Bohanna's real name. And now Arlington Hambright just suddenly shows up out of nowhere. But Stone Smart is their tight end who's been there for 3 years from Old Dominion, for those that may not know, over at the Chargers. But Arlington Hambright is just Quentin Bohanna. I mean, he's just like, well, defensive line didn't work for me. Let me go change my name again to try the offensive line.
Arlington Hambright is a character on Bridgerton. I'm fairly convinced that's correct.
It is two suburban names. You know, you have a firsty, you have a suburby.
There you go.
That'll do it for us. It's getting late here. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us. We got PK.com for Mike Herndon, where you can read all of his hate pieces on Tennessee Titans. You can read all the positive stuff, maybe to the point that it's too toxic for people to read because it's too positive, over at stackinginbox.com and Sobros Network for Stoney Keeley, at Stoney Keeley on Twitter, at Mike Herndon NFL on Twitter. And, of course, we have Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons, Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And obviously all the great shows over at 104.5 p.m. Arcade Dub, Buck Rising, then Cover 2, then 3HL. Got all those guys right over there. And then we got the pregame and postgame shows happening on Sunday. Cannot wait to be talking about the Tennessee Titans all the way through till 9 p.m. What a joy, what a joy, what a joy that I get to stay up late talking about the Titans because they had to go play a 3 o'clock game over on the West Coast. Oh, man, I hate it.
Duty calls.
Because it's also just like in the worst time, because I usually eat at like 5 p.m. or 6:30 p.m., you know, right around there. I usually eat around that time. Now the whole schedule's just
so you're gonna be hangry too. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna be so hangry.
Your tummy.
I'm gonna have to figure something out. Maybe I'll just go somewhere and watch the game and then come back, you know, at halftime, go watch the game, then come back or something. But other than that, this has been Football and Other F Words. We appreciate you guys joining with us. And you have just been effed.